if you grew up with poor parents, it doesn't mean that you have to suffer with them. Oftentimes, people who grow up with poor parents have this idea in their mind that this is just what life is. These are the cards I was dealt with, and the destiny that I'm headed towards is the destiny that I'm currently living, which is essentially poverty, right? I want to kind of shed light on this topic a little bit and give you guys some hope if you're struggling, if you grew up with poor parents, or if you just want to hear some of my thoughts on this. So guys, listen, none of us are dealt with perfect cards, right? Some of us grow up in better financial circumstances than others, right? But all of us have the ability as children of God, as images of God, to expand our abilities, expand our mind, expand our so-called limitations that we may be experiencing. And that's not to say that it will be easy, or that it will be fun, or that it will be effortless or like smooth, right? So if you grew up with poor parents, right, you have to get out of the mindset that I have to suffer with them, right? Because there's a saying that family is everything, right? And here's the thing, here's my theory on this, and you guys probably will resonate with what I'm gonna say. Family is everything if you and your parents are benefiting, right? If your parents have never tried to help you, right, and they had you without having some financial things in order, right, then you're just living out their bad decisions. Does that kind of make sense, right? So if your parents had you, right, and they were on food stamps themselves, or they lived paycheck to paycheck, or they just weren't good with their finances, right? They weren't great at budgeting. They're excessive consumers. Why do you feel that you have to stay there with them and suffer with them, right? Because at the end of the day, right, we all have one life to live. Do you want to live the life that your parents have in front of you, right? That it wasn't even your choice, right? You didn't choose to grow up in this situation, right? Where you're struggling with food, you guys, it's hard to afford, just the basic necessities of life. That is not what God wants for you, right? God wants you to be rich. God wants you to be abundant. God wants you to be, God wants you to have the most that life has to offer. And if you're in this weird mindset that, I have to just help my parents because family is everything, you can help. I'm not saying you can't help your parents, right? Like if they're good to you, right, and they give you encouragement, or they're just there to support you, right, but they struggle financially, that's okay. But some parents struggle financially and just expect their children to just give them money and just suffer with them. And I'm just saying that I'm not okay with that. I don't like that worldview or that idea of how things should go, especially when it comes to your children, right? Like, don't you want your kids to have a better future? Don't you want your kids to live a better life than you're living, right? In my view, if a parent has this idea in their mind that my kid should suffer with us, that's sort of selfish, right? Because now you're limiting your seed, you're limiting your offspring to your poor life decisions, right? So if you grew up with poor parents, doesn't mean you have to suffer with them, right? Now, if you're in a situation where you want to get out, right, you have to sit down, right? And, there's this idea also, let me clear this up as well, that you just can't get yourself up off your bootstraps and fix things. Yes, you absolutely can, right? God never puts you in a situation, right, that you can't get out of. Now, again, like I said earlier, does it mean it's going to be easy? Does it mean it's going to happen overnight? Does it mean you'll get out of that situation tomorrow? No. But what it does mean is that there is a way, there is a strategy, there is certain things you can do, there is certain belief systems you can break away from to eventually reach a point in life where you might not be rich, but you'll be in a better financial position and not have to suffer like your parents did, right? So what I would say is you have to sit down, right, and look and be like, okay, if my parents are supportive of me, all right, and they just ask me for a little bit of help, right, because they struggle, right, then okay, you can give them money. But if your parents don't, right, if they're like, again, I'm just throwing shit out there, but if they're, you know, struggling, if your mom and dad are split, or maybe they're toxic, like they have bad communication, or they're bad with money, they don't really care about you, right, you're kind of just there as a way to make things better for them, then you have to, and it's the toughest thing, because as kids, like, we look to our parents as like the primary, we grow up with our parents, they're our first line of like authority, right? So when you see your parents in a bad light, right, it sucks, because it's like, yo, like, anyone, even at me at times, like, there's times where I'm like, yo, let me call my dad to help me out with something, right? Let me call my mom, I want her opinion on something. Like, it sucks knowing that, like, you don't have that, right? So I'm not gonna sit here and say it's easy to break away from that, but you have to understand that as you get older, right, as you become an adult, right, like, you're gonna have to be more self-sufficient, right? Your parents are there primarily in your youth to kind of show you the way, kind of get you to understand how life works, you know, as in a base way, right? But it's up to you to look at it and be like, okay, I need to break away from this, right? And that might mean, hey, you know, you just one day say, hey, fuck it, I'm gonna not even tell my parents, I'm gonna start looking for a place to rent with maybe a few roommates, right? I'm gonna start working more, right? I'm gonna save up for a car, right? And again, this is gonna suck, right? Like, it would suck not having transportation. It would suck not being able to having to watch what you buy and watch what you eat, but this is the way, right? Like, it shouldn't always be easy, but there is a way, right? And it's not to say you can be well off right away. If you struggle with spending, right, that's something you can work on. If you struggle with working more, that's something you can fix, right? So everything that I am talking about comes down to you and your personal choices, right? Just because you have a bad situation doesn't mean that now it's set in stone that you're gonna just live this miserable life forever where you just keep giving your parents money, right? So I just want to give you guys some hope, right? And again, your lives are different, right? Like, there's some things that I'm probably missing here that some of you guys may be struggling with, right? But the big picture message here is that you need to start to take into account your own decisions, what you want for your future, and how you're going to get there, and start detailing at least what you can do tomorrow, what you can do next week, what you can do next month, to start moving towards not maybe you don't want to be rich, but you don't want to live with this toxic family situation, right? So again, it's different for everybody, but I think if everyone looked and was like, okay, look, there is something I can do about this, you know, obviously you first acknowledge there's a problem, right? I don't like this isn't benefiting me. My parents, they say they love me, but they're hurting my ability to grow, they're hurting my ability to move forward. And then based off of that foundation of how you think, you can start to plan strategically and start to break away from that situation, right? And then, you know, life gets better, and you don't have to suffer. You don't have to keep giving money to people that don't care about you. And, you know, you start your own family, right? You start your own family. You start teaching them better things, better ways how to live, right? Because the problem is that, you know, as far as generational curses go, we just accept that if this is how generations go, or this is how my family tree has been for multiple generations, that this is how it has to go. But generational curses can often be broken, right? It just takes an inquisitive nature. It takes questioning, and it takes you being willing to be like, okay, I'm gonna break this generational curse, right? I'm not gonna live like the past 3 generations of my family tree have lived, right? And again, not simple, not easy, right? Me even talking about it here might offend some people. I might look like an asshole. I might look like I don't understand you. Like, I don't know I'm not in your shoes. I don't know. But I'm telling you that if you try, if you really think, if you really plan, you can find a way out, right? So anyways, this comes down to really you taking into account everything that you can do as an adult, right? So yeah, guys, that's it. That's all. I hope you guys have got value out of this video. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe. If you guys have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them down below. And as always, I will talk to you guys soon. Peace.